So welcome. I'm Des Starritt, the Executive Director of Christians United for Israel here in the UK. And as a Christian Zionist organization, we've been trying to bring a balanced view and an informed view on the current situation in the Middle East. There's currently a massive campaign by the media and some in the international community, and certainly the UN, to blame Israel for all the problems, whilst failing to condemn Hamas, a terrorist organization who fired over 4,000 rockets into Israel aimed at civilians. But today I don't want to talk about so much the conflict in Israel, but more about the impact on the conflict it's having here in the UK, and especially on our Jewish communities. As Christians at CUFI, we have always tried to build good relationships with the Jewish community, and now more than ever, they need our support. So I'm really pleased that today I have my good friend Steven Jaffe with us to talk about what's happening in the Jewish community. And we'll talk about how best Christians can show their love and their support at this crucial time. So Steven, welcome.
Thank you, Des, and thank you for the opportunity really to reach out from the Jewish community to our Christian friends. And I think it's so important at this time that we're there for each other, to support each other and encourage each other. It is a very disturbing climate here in our country, in the UK.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've been very concerned as we've seen some of the anti-Semitic incidents, the rallies and so on that have been taking place here. And we really wanted to sort of show our support. So anything you can share with us that will encourage us and encourage our Christian community to get behind you is really important at this time.
Well, thank you, Des, and it is hugely appreciated, the opportunity to share with you some of what the Jewish community in the UK is experiencing and feeling at the moment. We just had the festival of Shavuot, which in the Christian tradition is linked, of course, to Pentecost. And for that, it required a major security operation in our synagogues, wherever Jews were gathering to pray. And that involved an organization called the Community Security Trust, which is a charity based in the Jewish community, staffed mostly by volunteers who stand outside places of worship and other Jewish buildings and institutions to provide deterrent and security against attack. And this was alongside a lot of cooperation with the police. I have to tell you, Des, that apprehension and fear is very high in the Jewish community at the moment. We have seen it in our past experience of when there is conflict in the Middle East, how this impacts in the UK. And that organisation that I mentioned, the Community Security Trust, has recorded 6 times the amount of anti-Semitic incidents since the conflict in Gaza started from the previous period. And what lies behind that statistic is a lot of hate on social media, verbal assaults on the street, including against school children, against elderly members of our community, physical attacks on synagogues, and that can be daubing slogans, it can be trying to break windows, and physical attacks on people. We've had a rabbi who has been hospitalized after an attack in Northeast London. And we've seen disgraceful scenes of people in cars deliberately targeting Jewish areas, waving Palestinian flags. But much beyond that, their rhetoric is one of intense hatred. So the slogans that they were hurling, the abuse that they were hurling as they traveled through Jewish areas in North London was "kill the Jews." They said other things which I can't repeat.
Oh, I know.
Really, really horrendous.
Yeah.
And of course, many people will say, well, they are thugs and they are bad people, but it goes much beyond one or two hot-headed individuals. Because the philosophy and the ideology of Hamas, which they are supporting, is without doubt about killing the Jews. That's part of their charter. It's part of what they do in terms of their launching missiles deliberately to kill civilians. It's not for them an unfortunate collateral damage. They are deliberately targeting cities, civilian infrastructure in Israel. So this ideology of kill the Jews is central to Hamas. And in this country, it's not only that there are followers and supporters of Hamas, which is of course deeply threatening and challenging to all of us. It is also the attitude, I would say, of the mainstream media, or much of it, and some of our political and other leaders who turn a blind eye to that nature of Hamas. Their focus is entirely on the civilian casualties in Gaza. And that is understandable, and it is something that we should all share and not close our hearts to. However, these people are ignoring the nature of Hamas, and I'm talking now about people in our country, the media people, opinion formers. If they're not prepared to expose the nature of Hamas and condemn it, and instead sidestep all of that to demonization on Israel and Israel alone, well, they are the fellow travelers of that ideology. They may not share it, they may be horrified by it if you confronted them with it face to face, but what they are doing day by day by day in terms of their rhetoric and narrative and demonization of Israel on the one hand, and a total whitewash of Hamas on the other, provides license to those hotheads and thugs and people around them to do what they do. And so this is a crisis, I would say. It's not unique to Britain. It's happening around the world. It's totally predictable, Des, because you and I were around, well, 2014 is perhaps something that stands out in both our minds. It goes back even further, of course, that when there is violence in the Middle East, anti-Semitism will rear its ugly head across the world. It provides a license for those on the far right, the far left, and radical Islamists. And that is what we've already seen in the UK and in other parts of the world this past week. And the Jewish community is understandably fearful. And, you know, we thank God for our Christian friends. And I know many of our Christian friends, supporters of CUFI, are wondering, what can we do to help in terms of prayer and in terms of practical support? So I think this is, you know, us speaking today is actually vitally important. And I know that we will cover some of the practical things that people can do.
Absolutely. Well, as you know, and you've mentioned 2014, in that year, because of the conflict, I think the increase in anti-Semitism or anti-Semitic incidents was about 100%. So you're talking about 600% already in a very short space of time. So we're dealing with a bigger issue at this time. I mean, obviously from CUFI's perspective, we've had our Christians Against Anti-Semitism campaign running for many years. In fact, since 2015, when we started CUFI. And we've seen a lot of Christians educated in the truth and the reality of what's actually happening. But there needs to be more, doesn't it? There needs to be action. It's not just about understanding the situation. We certainly have to stand up and speak out on behalf of Israel and the Jewish community, and especially at this time.
Absolutely, Des. And I was delighted to see in the Jewish Chronicle, which is the main Jewish newspaper in the UK, there was a letter in this week's edition, after page after page after page of bad news about rising anti-Semitism and hatred. A number of church leaders have written a letter into the Jewish Chronicle, and we want to build on this. And I think CUFI is perfectly placed to build on that support of wanting to show solidarity with the Jewish community at this time. There are a number of practical initiatives and things that are going on at the moment, which I know CUFI are fully supportive of, including a emailing campaign to MPs. And it's crucial. I know it doesn't sound as if it's crucial to many people who are perhaps not politically minded, but we know that those people who hate Israel are inundating MPs with their skewered narrative, and we have to do our bit to ensure that Israel's case is put in Parliament. It's our nation, which is, it's so important. And so the email campaign, which I know CUFI supporting, and so people can find out the details of that, I'm sure, through your social media. I would implore everyone to take part, to participate, and to ensure that everyone in their families, communities, congregations have the opportunity to participate in it. Because I often, it's quite frustrating in a way where a member of a family will participate in an emailing campaign and perhaps not think about their partner, their children, their parents, to get them involved as well, and to give perhaps members of their wider community, whether it's their church congregations or organizations that they belong to give them the opportunity to participate by passing on the links and the message. So I'd implore people to take part themselves and also to spread the word as widely as they can.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. On that, we, as you say, we do have this campaign running. We're writing to our MP and to Boris Johnson. But we do get some people who say, well, it's not worth writing to my MP because he's so anti-Israel anyway. I would say that's exactly the person you should be writing to, because our MPs are often swayed by numbers. It can be as simple as that sometimes. And as you pointed out, at this moment in time, those who are anti-Israel are doing everything within their power to advocate for or against Israel. So we need to do the opposite. We need to be strong and speak out. And literally, even if your MP is against, they may be swayed by more pressure from people who are pro-Israel. They have to represent their communities. They can't be a lone voice. And so we do need to actually get our voices heard.
I think that's correct, Des. You've made the point also that the letter goes to the Prime Minister, so it's very important that the global total is as high as possible, even if the local MP is not supportive. I take your point entirely as well, that many MPs do believe that they don't have any constituents who are supportive of Israel. Therefore, they can say what they want. Even if it seems impossible to change the MP's attitude entirely, you can also have a moderating impact. In other words, he'll just be slightly more careful as to how he expresses himself, or he or she. So I think there is every reason to write to your MP, no matter their political perspective, and it's important to reach the government level as well, which the email campaign is doing. Thankfully, we saw a statement by the government written by the Ministry, the Home Secretary and the Minister of Communities this week, supportive of the Jewish community and empathizing with the community as to what it's going through. So that would not happen if the government wasn't aware that there was a groundswell of opinion that was deeply concerned on issues around anti-Semitism. So let's encourage everyone to participate in this campaign, no matter which constituency or which part of the country they live in. And Christians have a huge part to play in this, because the Jewish community is fairly small and fairly concentrated in one or two parts of the country, principally North London, where I am, and parts of Manchester. So there are huge parts of the country, many MPs who don't have an organised Jewish community in their constituency. So all the more important are our Christian friends who are spread out much more widely, as likely to come from rural areas as from the kind of urban places where Jews tend to live. So it is a massively important part of these campaigns is the Christian support. And I'm really grateful to your organisation for the part you play in mobilising that support, which, by the way, has greatly increased the number of messages. Back in 2014, there was almost a three-figure sum total of pro-Israel messages that were sent out to MPs. And now it's well in excess of 10,000 and increasing every day. So there are people out there who are participating, they should be thanked. It's wonderful. Let's all make the effort of spreading the word to ensure that our families and communities have the opportunity to participate as well. In addition to the email campaign, we have a rally in central London on Sunday, which I know again CUFI is supporting and promoting, and that there will be a large Christian support at that demonstration. I'm absolutely sure of it, because whenever I've attended them, I always stand beside a Christian supporter who's come from, in some cases, Aberdeen, I remember once, from Leeds, from Manchester, coming from, making a huge effort to stand with the Jewish community. Now, I know there will be many Christians who just simply can't be in central London, and they will hold that rally, I am sure, in prayer, that it goes safely and successfully and positively and makes that impact that we all want to see. But to encourage again Christians to look at your social media in order to get the details of that rally, which I understand will not be released until Friday for security reasons in terms of the venue and time, but I'm sure you will be releasing that information at the time.
Yeah, the details are on our social media, so have a look at that. But yeah, as you point out, the actual specific location in London has been kept secret for security reasons, obviously. But yeah, get behind that. I mean, we have had a lot of good response to that. Obviously, people from around the country support CUFI and support the Jewish community, but they can't be there necessarily if they're in the outermost parts of Scotland or wherever. But they certainly will uphold you in prayer and continue to do so. Yeah. So, Stephen, do you have any family or connections directly with Israel? Because I say one of the things is there's a very strong media coverage of what's happening in the sort of Palestinian sort of areas. But what about Jewish people in Israel under rocket attack? How are they sort of holding up?
Well, it's an incredible thing to, just to respond to that. Initially, I would say, Des, is that Hamas rockets and missiles have killed Thai guest workers, they've killed Muslims, they've killed, I think there was an Indian care worker. So it's not just the Jewish population that are the targets of this horrendous barrage of missiles. It cuts right across Israeli society and indeed guest workers. So the situation with my own family, like many Jewish people here in the UK, I have immediate family in Israel. I have a son there, I have cousins there. And obviously it's a time of anguish and concern. And I'm sure many Christian people who have friends in Israel, I know so many visit Israel so regularly. You have friends with your tour guides, with the people you meet in the hotels. You've got all sorts of connections and contacts there. And we all feel anguish for them that in their everyday lives, a siren goes off and they have literally seconds to get to the bomb shelter. Think of a young mum who has maybe a child playing outside and a baby sleeping in the flat or in the house. What does she do? Which child does she grab to ensure that they get to the bomb shelter in time? Horrendous that people have to face that in their everyday lives. So, it's a time of anguish for people who are having to experience that. And the pictures, if you've seen some of the videos coming out of Israel, you will understand that the sirens going off. Can you imagine British city? The sirens going off because missiles are heading in its direction. Thank God the Israel's Iron Dome is able to take down a lot of these missiles, but some are getting through because of the sheer numbers of them, and each one is designed and capable to kill.
Yeah.
Imagine that landing in London, in Glasgow, in Birmingham, in our cities. We would expect the world to show solidarity with us.
Exactly.
In the face of an attack by a radical Islamist organization whose ideology is not dissimilar from the people who blew up the concert in Manchester some years ago, who carried out suicide bombings in Paris and in across Europe. And yet, they see that many in the world are not showing solidarity on a basic human level to them. It's well to them. And instead, Israel is being depicted as the aggressor, the Palestinians as the victims, and that's it. It's depicted full stop. And therefore, when a Palestinian spokesperson comes on to Channel 4 News, for example, they're treated with great deference. And when Israel's representative comes on, the interview takes an aggressive tone. And we've seen this again and again in our media. But I think something's really important, Des, is that our media doesn't speak for this entire country, you know, and on a number of issues, which I will not go into, other political issues completely unrelated to Israel. The media has a view and an agenda which is not shared by many, many people in this country. And I believe that there is much greater support for Israel in this country than you would assume if your only source of information was mainstream media outlets. And by the way, not all the media, but a large section of it falls into the category that I've mentioned, that will not focus on the nature and activities of Hamas and purely on the civilian impact in Gaza. And I said before, and I know that Christians will pray for those who are in Gaza, who are experiencing that, because our hearts cannot be closed to civilian suffering. But unless we get to the roots of this conflict and understand the causes of it, we can never bring it to an end, and we will consign generations of Palestinians and Israelis to this kind of conflict if we're never prepared to address the nature of Hamas, what its aims are, the eradication of Israel, the establishment of a radical Islamist state from the River Jordan to the Mediterranean Sea. They don't hide it, yet our media doesn't want to focus on that at all. So there is so much at stake, I think, for us who have loved ones in Israel, our family, yes, absolutely. But it's an issue here in our country as well, and that the direction that we're going to go as a nation, I think, is very much at stake. As so often we say it in so many different respects, but, you know, what begins by being against the Jews never ends by being against the Jews. That convoy that went through our North London, shouting abuse to Jewish people, that's how it begins. But it doesn't end that way. It's not just the Jewish community that those people will have in their sights. So this is hugely important, not just for the people living in Israel, but it is a matter of, I think, you know, hugely disturbing for all of us in the UK, Jewish, Christian, or whatever. And by the way, I should mention that an imam in Birmingham, who made a pronouncement which wasn't liked by elements within the wider Muslim community, was also attacked in Birmingham this week. So they will turn on anyone who stands in their way. And so this is a defining moment, I think, for the UK.
No, I agree. But that means we do need to stand together, doesn't it? And we need to, you know, have our voice heard as one big community. And as you point out, there are, you know, Muslim communities as well who are not, you know, along with this agenda. So we all need to come together and speak out on behalf of Israel and the Jewish community at this time, certainly against anti-Semitism in all its forms. And we cannot see this continue in the UK. It has to be stamped out here. Yeah, very much so. So we've mentioned the London rally on Saturday. We've mentioned the
Sunday does.
Sorry, yes, I'm thinking Stuart sort of. We've mentioned about standing up against anti-Semitism. We've talked about doing everything we can on social media. I was interviewing Colonel Richard Kemp the other day, and he encouraged Christians to actually, first of all, get informed, to understand and know what's going on. Don't just follow the media headlines. And secondly, to actually do everything we can to speak out. So that's important for Christians to do that. So thank you for encouraging us to do it. I think your plight in the Jewish community is something we should be concerned about and should take action as a result.
Thank you, Des. And I don't take any of that for granted, that desire to support. I know how heartfelt it is. And we need our friends. The Jewish community cannot and should not stand alone. And the part that you play as an organization in mobilizing support is crucial. And I really hope that, please God, you only grow and increase the support base. You have a vital role to play.
Good. Well, thank you, Stephen. Thanks for sharing with us today. We certainly will continue to uphold you in our prayers. We continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and now the whole of Israel and the Middle East at this time. God bless you and take care.
Thank you, Des. Thank you so much.